And then G2 think about how to acquire tempo differently than a lot of the teams in the LEC. It's much more about making sure that your gold is constantly always spent as opposed to like sitting on it. It used to be that you win a team fight, you take an objective, and then you make your back. But in that long space, the other team is reset. They're now first to the play, and then that's when you like have this situation where they just won the team fight in the Dragon, but they lost the Baron. Oh no!
Vladimir will never get nerfed. You will get an 0-5 Yasuo in every one of your ranked games. NA will win worlds.
Hey man, got trouble sleeping? Try Brand Effect Sleep.
What are you doing in my home?
Hello everyone, this is Darius from the Shot Caller, joined here by Froskorn, currently on the verge of completing her very first LEC split here at the Summer Split Finals in Athens. How's your day and your prep been so far for the semifinals?
In all honesty, semifinals and finals, as long as you're not dealing with like the barrier of entry of like nerves and it being like your first final, it's actually probably the easiest day of the year, just because there's so much to work with. Like, if you can't find a good storyline, a nice stat, incredible analysis to deal with like these teams at this moment, then you're like pretty bad at your job. So I'm just super hyped.
Right, so can you give us some little glimpse here of Schalke, the Schalke storylines, because you already know the Fnatic ones, you know.
So today it's really about reminding fans, because I feel like a lot of people were on the Rogue hype train when Schalke had a very messy series against Vitality and Rogue. And I think it's about reminding fans that Schalke are a hyper-consistent team, and that through that consistency and that clean fundamentals that they were rightfully here, and kind of getting people re-excited for like how Schalke approached the game, and not just being like, oh, I wish Rogue was here, like why wasn't that 17-year-old Finn, like that stuff. So.
Oh boy, that meme is gonna stay here for a few weeks here and there, maybe.
Yeah, probably. In terms of analysis, like I think everyone knows that Fnatic are heavy favorites, unless Fnatic were just like wounded by G2 and Schalke gets to blow them up. But there is like a very real world where Schalke can beat Fnatic. I think it starts with Ignar and Upset in the bot lane and making sure that Hilly doesn't get roam access into mid lane. Abba and Trick love to play together, a little less so than the Rogue series, but if you look at like their jungle proximity through the regular split, it's the highest of any mid laner jungle duo in the league. Trick loves playing through Abba and then rotating out to a side lane, usually to Ignar and Upset. So I think like stylistically, if Ignar and Upset can slow down Hilly and Reckless, keep Hilly locked down in lane, that then naturally helps out Abba and Trick, and that's how Schalke would win.
Very excited, of course. If Schalke do win through that method, then we now have proof that Froskorn is, of course, by far the most superior analyst. Not in the predictions, but that's a whole different ballgame.
1 point down!
Oh, really? 1 point? Oh.
Okay, so low-key, here's the thing. So people think that sometimes we have like some busted predictions on our thing, but we're in like a game where Lore is right now in the lead. It's me and Medic tied for 1 point behind. You get 2 points if you predict the right winner, and then you get like 3 more points, something like that, for the result or like the score line. So like today, even though I think that it'll probably be a 3-1 to Fnatic, because I do think that there are clear like win conditions for Schalke, I predicted a Fnatic 3-0 because I can't predict the 3-1 because Lore probably predicted the 3-1. And if we match, then she stays ahead. So I have to go for the different score line. And then I was like, what if I just predict like a Schalke victory? Like the crazy off chance. But then you have to stand on the analyst desk and like prepare it. So.
Oh yeah, it's like a mental mind game at this point. It's gotten like 12 people are participating. I mean,
which is why like predictions, like that little score line, that's what everyone like snapshots out and like holds you to. But like the actual important shit that we say is like much more important about like the why and the win conditions versus that score line. Because that score line, sometimes that's just there because I gotta make the points. I gotta take the risks.
And then you all of a sudden have Roma winning on a game day, and everyone just goes, okay, well that just happened. That happened. Like when they Rogue beat Splice 3-0, I think. Though he was the only one predicting that one. But anyway, since I mentioned this in the intro, you are now on the verge of concluding your first year here in EU. You've of course been to MSI in Berlin, but overall, what has been your experience like with the broadcast team and the broadcast in general?
I can only sing the praises of audience players, team, broadcast team. In all honesty, I was in like a super deep, dark depression in China. Like, you laugh through the pain is kind of what you have to do. But I left the LPL. It was like a hard choice to make, but like a very clear choice. And I really mean it when I say it that like the LEC probably saved my life. So it means a lot to like complete the year and to have such an incredible team around me.
You also mentioned that there were times in the LEC when you're not comfortable with your own casting and stuff. Were you able to draw energy from your colleagues and other people around you?
Yeah, it's particularly with Dracos. We kind of did more duos this split than we did in the first split, so I didn't really cast a lot with Trevor or Medic, even though I'm casting the final with Medic tomorrow. And duo casts, I think I perform better in a tri-cast than a duo, and this isn't like shade at my play-by-plays, but I have like a lot of self-confidence issues, and so I kind of like get into this mindset where I sit and I look at a game, I'm like, okay, it should be played out like this, or this is a mistake, but then I think, what if I'm wrong? So I don't say it, and then I like, oh, I'm not saying anything, I'm missing my flow, I'm messing everything up, and then you kind of spiral down, and I don't necessarily trust my play-by-plays right now in terms of the synergy that they'll be able to like cover me, so I'm just like I talk much less in a duo cast, and I'm much more like tighter up and don't feed energy. In a tri-cast, where I don't trust my play-by-plays, I definitely trust my other colors. So like if I'm casting with Ender or Vedius, I'll probably feel much more lively, much more talkative. There'll be a lot more bounce and flow. And that's kind of like more of the expectation that I have from like my LPL casting to pull over into LEC. So we're not quite there yet.
Is that maybe also something that hasn't been looked at in the past? For example, we talk about players and their health and mental health as well, and a lot of teams are bringing in sports psychologists and stuff like that. This topic hasn't really been discussed in casting a lot, unfortunately. Do you think that there should be more light shed onto it, or is it just too difficult of a individual situation usually?
I mean, of course I'm biased kind of being a caster. I do think there's a lot of overlaps in terms of like mental health when you're in front of a camera. I know that a lot of people kind of have the sentiment of either walk away, turn it off, or like that's just part of the job, that's what you signed up for. It's not. And like people will just have fundamental disagreements on that. I do know that I'm not the only caster who struggles with this. I think if you talk to anyone, we all have the same things, and it's similar that the players speak up. I think a lot of casters don't speak up about it simply because you want to prefer to give a spotlight to the players. They're usually younger, have less life experience, and just like speaking to my own experience, yeah, shit can be like really fucked. And it's just something that you have to deal with. I know that like I've personally had to like look at therapy and kind of change up my relationship and engagement tools and kind of like coping mechanisms, working with like the community and things like that.
I can also highly recommend going to therapy. It's always a good thing to do, even as a man. I know that there are some stereotypes here and there, but please consider it if you do feel like it could be helpful. On to brighter topics. Last year, you were part of the casting crew of the dominant region. This year, potentially, the same thing could happen. Are you just the good luck charm of the League of Legends world?
What can I say? I know when to jump ship. No, it's by complete chance. I was like, honestly, when I was moving over to Europe, I'm like, the thing that I'll really miss about the LPL is like amazing League of Legends. Like I don't want to go and like cast a lesson. And then I got there, I was like, this is great. The teams are so smart. It definitely took me a long time to kind of like figure out what teams are doing. The LEC thinks completely differently about the game than the LPL does. And so like I tried to predict things very early on when I got here, and I would be wrong. I'd be like, nah, I'm pretty sure an LPL team would do that, but there's like that learning curve. So it's been really fun to like figure out the personality of not only the individual players in the LEC, but the teams as a whole. It's great. Right,
and what would you describe, or what has been some of your favorites personalities in terms of team personalities in the league so far?
I am a huge fan of G2's personality. I really fucking love just like how testing limits. I think that there's a bad rap. Like people used to use this to put the LPL teams down a lot, and I know like I lean into the joke as well, but there is a genius in micro outplays. Like people only kind of have macro on this pedestal, and if you don't win through a macro victory, you are somehow like a caveman inferior team, and that's just not true. The game right now has so much gold stacked into the lane phase and early decision making, split seconds in fights, that those micro decisions really should be held up to like higher standard. Unfortunately for me as a caster, I can't see a lot of shit. Like I need glasses and it's really hard for me to keep track of things in team fights, whereas like Ender really thrives on that. So I definitely need to change up my casting style for this type of meta to really point out how ingenious that is. But usually going back and watching VODs, like these split second decisions that happen in fights that look like Fiesta games, there is a very real beauty in what's happening and how the game is evolving.
It is very beautiful to watch as well. I feel like it's even more accessible to the viewer in a way as well, like than previous iterations. Because previously, like in Season 4, it kind of felt like you have to learn and read 300 pages and then you understand how SKT works, but not before.
Yeah, and there's definitely still like some cool macro things that are happening right now. So I think it's just about finding that balance and kind of changing up how I know us colorcasters and EU, so Inder Vedius and I, really took a long look at like what we were talking about, what we wanted to focus on, and you can tell like about 3 weeks into the split that we take a really hard turn and start talking about very different things, and we're constantly like working on it. But I've been very proud about what the colorcasters have done in the LEC to try to put like a magnifying glass on why our teams are so unique and special and what makes them so clever.
Okay. And what would you describe, or if you had to describe Schalke's, Fnatic's, and G2 special? We kind of already covered G2, but like, let's go with Schalke and Fnatic. What would be your slogans for them, so to speak?
Schalke are our team fighting team. I think what's special about one of their greatest strengths and one of their greatest weaknesses is that they're very telegraphed and very formula based. I think that they rely a bit too much on winning team fights and winning objectives to kind of move the tempo. I don't want to say tempo, move the pace of the game. Tempo has a very specific meaning. Fnatic is probably the only team that can contest with G2 because they're the only team that's willing to hit back from like minute 1, level 1, but they don't have the same versatility that G2 have. And then G2 think about how to acquire tempo differently than a lot of the teams in the LEC. It's much more about making sure that your gold is constantly always spent as opposed to like sitting on it. It used to be that you win a team fight, you take an objective, and then you make your back. But in that long space, the other team is reset. They're now first to the play, and then that's when you like have the situation where they just won the team fight in the Dragon, but they lost the Baron. Oh no! G2 will like almost never overreach. Like there'll still be times when they win a team fight, they take an objective, but it's more so like take small incremental advantages, but so very quickly go back and forth. I'm like a big NFL football fan, so you think about it as the difference of a team who has like a big quarterback and they just dump the ball down the field, and it's about moving the chains. That's kind of like the old way of playing League of Legends, where you have massive gold leads, like massive team fight, Baron, towers, reset, oh boom. G2 are like a running team, where it's like these constant backs, constant sinking, creating like how efficient they are with their tempo and when they're on the offensive and how many things they set up and how many things they knock down. It's really hard to keep track of because of how quickly it goes, which is why it feels like you get to mid-game and G2 just blow up the entire map.
Right. Very nice explanation. I loved it. Anything you would like to say to the LEC fans?
I have thoroughly enjoyed coming to the LEC. It has truly changed my life. It has made me a better broadcaster and a better analyst, and I can't wait to continue to develop my skills.
Very nice to hear that. And a hashtag for the people that watch until the end?
Hashtag EU is going to win Worlds.
Hashtag EU is gonna win Worlds. I love that. Thank you so much for your time. Make sure to follow Frostcorn on Twitter as well. This was Darius from the Shot Caller here from Athens from the LEC Summer Split Finals. See you guys then. Bye bye. We'd especially like to thank Krzysztof Bujnowicz, Erich Althaus, Lucas Legal, Lazy Raven, and Adam Novosviat for your continuous and very special support, and of course all the people whose names you see scrolling past you right now. We have a lot of amazing projects, and of course Worlds 2019 in Europe coming up. So thank you so much for supporting us and enabling us to do our work. Thank you.